Episode 8, The Breaking Point, Isaiah 30:15. For thus saith the Lord God, the Holy One of Israel, in returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength, and ye would not. The silence in Jacob's return to the block was louder than any announcement could have been. No one really talked about it, or at least not openly. He slipped back into the shadows like he'd never left, his presence a quiet reminder of how things worked out here. The word going around was that the evidence against him was thin, built on a story that someone might have planted deliberately. Whoever it was, they were smart enough to keep their name out of it. We called it dry snitching. The whole situation left a bad taste, like a rigged game where no one could see the dealer. Jacob's return wasn't celebrated, nor was it condemned. It was just another rule we had to learn to live with. But his eyes, when I saw him leaning against the corner store one afternoon, those eyes didn't belong to someone who'd been gone. They belonged to someone who'd never left. Elijah's camp had a pulse to it, vibrant and desperate. It kept going no matter the odds, resilient as a sapling splitting concrete. But the OGs had noticed it too, and they didn't like it. They'd started moving closer, sending out whispers to kids on the edge of the court. Promises of money, of status, of escape, but not Elijah's kind. His kind came slow, too slow for some of them. Theirs was immediate, intoxicating. One of the kids, JT, had stopped coming by a week ago. People said he was running for Darnell now, collecting debts and carrying things he wasn't supposed to. Every time Elijah found out, I could see the frustration on his face, the way his fingers tightened around the grip of a basketball like he was holding on to the last thing he had control over. The cameras didn't help. If anything, they made it worse. Watching someone watch you burns a hole in your skin, makes you feel simultaneously invisible and too exposed. I could see it in the way the younger kids moved now, like small animals caught in headlights. They were starting to second guess their instincts, hesitating where they used to trust themselves. The corners of the block had always been a labyrinth, but now they felt rigged, filmed at every possible angle. For the OGs, it made little difference. They operated in the dead spaces, the blind corners where the cameras couldn't reach. For the rest of us, it turned our lives into something unbearable. Like every step was a test from some unseen hand holding a permanent record. The weight at home was getting harder to push against. Mom had been sick for weeks now, and every day she missed work, the tether holding us together felt thinner. I'd hear her coughing through the walls late at night, each ragged breath like a countdown to something worse. I knew she was trying to keep us afloat, scrawling numbers onto a sheet of paper at the kitchen table like she could bend math to her will. But the strain was killing her, and it was killing me too. I picked up shifts at the fast food joint when I could, barely enough to make a dent, but enough to keep the lights on. Still, it felt like we were standing in quicksand, and every effort to stay above it only dragged us further down. One of the boys who used to come to Elijah's camp wasn't so lucky. Word spread quick that he'd been shot over by Miller Street, left to bleed out until someone finally called an ambulance. He was clinging to life now, but no one was sure for how long. When I closed my eyes, I could still see him during drills, ducking under the hoop with a grin too wide for his face. He'd been so small back then, just a kid with a love for the game. I didn't need to know all the details to understand how it happened. This place didn't need reasons. It just happened. At night, I'd lie awake and wonder whether all of this, the cameras, Jacob's return, the young kid in that hospital bed, was some kind of message, a lesson. But the streets didn't teach the way books did. They didn't hand out answers. They dangled choices in front of you, each one bearing a consequence wrapped in uncertainty. And every once in a while, they took someone to remind you of the stakes. The psychology of it wore you down, gnawed at your edges until you couldn't tell if you were hardened or hollowed out. Out here, survival wasn't bravery, it was muscle memory. Dr. J's shadow still loomed in my mind, but lately it felt less like inspiration and more like a ghost. He'd swapped this chaos for something else, but that didn't mean he escaped it. No one really escaped it. You either left a piece of yourself behind or you carried the weight forever. As much as I admired him, I couldn't shake the thought that maybe his successes came at a cost I wasn't willing to pay yet. The block wasn't just a place, it was a part of you. And how do you cut off a part of yourself without bleeding out completely? Standing under the faint glow of the busted streetlight that barely held back the creeping dark, I looked down at my scuffed sneakers and felt like they didn't belong to me anymore. I wasn't the person I used to be when I first laced them up. But then again, no one in this place stayed who they were for long. The thought of that boy in that hospital bed tightened my chest until breathing felt like work. I looked upward, past the unblinking lens of the nearest camera, past the hazy stars fighting to be seen, and as the sirens hummed in the distance again, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something beyond this, or if this was all there'd ever be.